Okay, we're in the Maamar Boka Kashacha, page 185. Just to recap briefly, yesterday, the Frierdiker Rebbe, the author, when he said this Maamar in 1934 in Glubaka, he explained to us the idea of, he's talking about Madvei, the whole Madvei Mitzrayim, the Torah says, and all illness of Egypt, within Egypt. So the Rebbe explains the Ruchdizdik, the spiritual aspect of this Madvei, and he brings the Gemara in Bava Metzia 3 opinions. And there is the opinion of Rav and Shmuel and Reb Chanina, I believe, yeah. And Rav says that Madvei refers to Ho'ayin, the eye, and he speaks about the ayin hara, the jealousy and all of that, where someone is jealous of what others have. Shmuel says it refers to ruach, and he spoke about the idea of air, if someone's full of air, and the issues associated with that. And then finally, Reb Chanina says it's sina, cold, and the Rebbe speaks about the idea of being cold, apathetic, in Yiddishkeit, missing varmkeit. Let's continue now. It's in the middle of the page, about 13, 14 lines down, where it says, es felt die Kedusha dike Varmkeit uv Yerushalmi. We're holding by there's a parenthesis in the middle of the page that says, Yerushalmi, Shabbos, Perik Yudalit. You understand you have it?
One.
It's on page 185, smack in middle of the page, in middle of the line. It says Uvi Yerushalmi, and there's a parenthesis. You got it, okay. Uvi Yerushalmi, and Masechta Shabbos, tractate Yerushalmi. Isa, the Gemara says, quote, Kol Chayli Husreifa. So here is a fourth opinion, right? It doesn't cite it in the name of a rabbi, of a sage, but it's a citation from the Gemara that when it says Kol Chayli, it refers to Sreifa, fire. Says the previous Rebbe, this can be generally explained with based on what the Balatanya, the Alter Rebbe, explains in chapter 1 of Tanya. Right, just before Yoni, he quoted the Alter Rebbe about Ruach. That was from chapter 1 in Tanya as well. The 4 items of frivolity and scoffing and boasting and idle chatter. That was a quote from Tanya chapter 1. So here, quotes again here, Tanya chapter 1. Now about fire, because fire is another element of the 4 elements, the foundations that of everything in the universe. What does he say there in Tanya? He says, the kas v'gaiva, anger, kas, the gaiva. You see here, Yoini, he says gaiva, which is different than his spirus. That's what I told you yesterday. His spirus boasting is like a bunch of hot air. Gaiva is bragging and haughtiness, but the person has with what to brag. So the Alter Rebbe says that kas v'gaiva, anger and gaiva, miyesoida eish. They come from the element of fire within the human being. Was the tzvei midas, these 2 emotions, the kas of anger, v'gaiva, and haughtiness, verbrennt dem Menschen, that's Yiddish, beautiful Yiddish too, burns the person. It burns you up. Because when you get angry, you're all enraged, you're all up in fire. And when you are bragging and being gaivadik, you're also, oh, I'm so powerful, I'm so special, I know so much. It's also a tnua, a notion of fire. Says the Rebbe, what would be, Hillel, the equivalent of a spiritual malady of fire? Says the Rebbe, this would be kadachas. You know what a kadachas is?
Again?
What?
Kadachas, like pushed aside?
No, that's tchia. That's the tchia. Kadachas is high temperature.
Fever.
A fever. Correct.
Okay.
The inyanoi koir v'choim b'shoachas. The Rebbe says here, look what he says, Yonasim, that this idea of a kadachas is someone having chills, cold, and temperature and fever b'sha'achas at one time. That's his definition of a kadachas. So, in other words, it's not technically fever, right? Well, actually, when you have fever, you have sometimes chills, and then you have heat. I don't know. Could it be malaria? No. It's by the way, in the Teichacha, I believe, it mentions kadachas, I think. Anyway. Uveruchni spiritually who hakrirus binyoni teiro mitzvahs. It's the aspect.
Measles?
What?
Could it be measles? Maybe measles. Kadachas.
No. Why today?
No?
Today in Hebrew you call measles kadachas?
I think kadachas means bumps, like bubbles.
I don't.
Kenzaim, no?
I don't know. I know in the Torah. I think it means a fever. When it comes to spirituality, what is this malady? It's on one hand you're cold, mitzvahs. Simultaneously, and you're very warm, you're very feverish, in worldly matters. You're very excited about worldly matters. So this Rebbe explains the Gemara in Yerushalmi, which is the fourth opinion, that Chayli Zu Sreifa. Now he goes to a fifth opinion, Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Zu Horayon. You know what it's referring to? It's referring to thoughts. Hirhurim royim, bad thoughts. The Rebbe says deeper, looking at it more deeper, it's the ideas and the scheming using clever chokhmah, being yoni kiyum mitzvahs, regarding fulfillment of mitzvahs. Leilach acharatam, you do mitzvahs, but you seek to justify the mitzvahs by following the reason and looking for a reason. And therefore, and many times you're lenient on yourself, becoming yoni hetadim with hetadim, because you say, look, the reason for this is so and so, and this doesn't apply now or in my situation, therefore I'm allowed to do it. Asher sof, the end will be, chas v'sholem, God forbid, boli de choloyim shoinim. You'll come to all kinds of maladies. Decheinu b'yeridus haneshama beguf. So it is with the descent of the soul into the body, b'chlal, overall speaking. In other words, as soon as a person tastes the taste of hetadim, it's just a spiral downward progression of being matir for yourself, all kinds of situations. And that, by the way, just for take a moment to talk about this, is the reason why the Chachamim, the sages, the rabbis, made Gedorim, Syog la Torah, make a fence around the Torah. Because maybe technically the thing is allowed, but a fence was made to protect the Torah. Why do you need a fence? You understand? Why isn't it enough to just do what the Torah says and etc.? Because we are matir. We find hetadim. You know, they always taught us in yeshiva, in smicha school, they taught us a good rabbi, a good rav is not someone who is machmir, but someone who's mekel, but he's mekel with a solid reason and support for the kula.
It's like when you go to the barber. How do you know he's a good barber? It's not what he cuts; it's what he leaves back, what he still leaves on.
I never heard that, but that's good. That is good. That's an original one, Yoni? It's an original, or you heard it somewhere?
It's original.
Same is true with the mohel.
Oh, and this morning I have a bris. Oh boy. Ashgacha pratis. Thank you.
Yeah.
But that's a very good mushal. Very, very good mushal. So the siyus siyag l'Torah, making a siyag, a boundary, is very important. And if we understand this principle and really understand it, we can understand some people who were perceived over the centuries as radicals. Religious radicals. Okay. I'll just give an example because it's public, so it's not lashon hara. The Satmar Rav, Rabbi Yoel Teitelbaum, right? Everyone, cites him and quotes him how anti-Zionist and anti-Israel he was and all that. Well, I can tell you, I wrote a whole book about Satmar Lubavitch and studied this man and studied his shittas. Not that I'm the world's expert on him, but I wanted to. The way it seems to me is that a lot of his stuff was rhetoric. It was rhetoric, and he used the rhetoric because he didn't want you to breach the Torah. So I'll give you an example. It was in 1963, and President Zalman Shazar, a Knesset member, was elected as president of Israel. The Rebbe spoke a sikha around this time, and he congratulated him and spoke positively about him. The Satmar Rebbe was already an old man, and he was vacationing and getting, up in Saratoga, New York, where they have, I think, some hot baths, and it's better air. And a Rav came, a distant relative, another relative of his, I forget it, it's a funny name, the Chechnever Rav or something, people would come up to walk with him and speak with him. This way he had company and he got his health, his walk-in. So this Rav comes up, and the Satmar Rav's Rebbetzin says to the visitor, please do not mention to my husband anything about what, with Shazar, because it's going to upset him more. As it is, he's upset. Anyway, he says, okay, but it came up in conversation. So the visiting Rav said, and the Satmar Rav was very upset. How could the Lubavitcher Rebbe laud Zalman Shazar, who represents Zionism and all of that? So he says to the Satmar Rav, maybe we should make a protest when you come back, or even if not, they make protests, at the UN, Manhattan, here, there. Maybe we should take, a lot of people and children. They make these public protests. And he expected the Satmar Rav to say, of course. And Satmar Rav said, no, don't make any protests. So here he is, on one hand, very upset and livid about what the Rebbe said. And naturally, what the Satmars would do would make these protests. And the Satmar Rebbe, in charge of the Satmar Hasidus, who gave the Shita, they call it the Shita, the movement, the philosophy, he says, no. What do I take from this story that I was told? What I take is that, he was very careful in using the public for his shittas. And in fact, just to go to another story, in 1970, again, there was some issue, I forget, with Eretz Yisrael, with Israel, and there was an outcry, and some Satmar Hasidim on their own made a protest at the UN. The Satmar Rebbe already had a major stroke in 1968, but he recovered, relatively speaking. He came out, and he wasn't the same, and they told him that a group of Satmars protested at the UN. When he heard that, he got very upset, and he said, I want you to find out all the names of all the people that were at the protest. It was a small protest. And I want you to publish their names on a document, and I want you to hang it on the front door of the main base medrash in Williamsburg, the Satmar Shul in Williamsburg, and you are to write in large black words, these people are forbidden to come into shul until they ask for forgiveness for doing this without permission. So here's a second story in which the same Satmar who was pro-protests penalized these people. Until today, you're talking about 1970, it's 50 years later, I met people who remember the note on the door, and it caused such a big ruckus in Williamsburg, and you know the Satmars, they don't capitulate. If they go out with full force. And they did not let those, and some of those people are alive, and you know, today I guess they're accepted already. But what I'm saying is, so why am I saying this? I'm saying this when you talk about making siyog la Torah, a gate, a fence around the Torah, and you talk about, these type of things, there were individuals, some more than others, and this, in my humble opinion, the Satmar Rebbe was one of them on the issue of Israel. He didn't really mean everything that he said. It's not what he was afraid. In other words, I don't believe that he was against Jews going to the Kaisel. He went before, he went before the state became a state.
Are you sure? I heard he went at 3 o'clock in the morning. He went 3 o'clock in the morning. I heard something, this was late 60s, maybe early 70s. He went, like when Yaini,
from after 68, he wasn't in Israel, he was a stroke patient. So the dates are wrong. He was in Eretz Yisrael in the 50s, in the 40s, and in the 50s. In the 60s, I think he was there once or twice. I don't remember. So I don't know about that. I have a book by a professor here, right here, and maybe I'll take a look later, because I saw he has a picture of someone who looks from the back like the Satmar Rav. So he has that picture in the book, and he says it's him, but that's from pre-state. I never heard that he went after, but I will check. Anyway, the point being, whether he did or he didn't, that he had issues with Zionism contradicting Torah law. And in order not to get to there, he put a fence around the whole concept. You follow? And so we have others. I'm not saying all, excuse the expression, radicals were this way, but this concept is found in Chazal, Asyus Yog Torah. Okay? So, Moshe, we're talking about this because the Rebbe here says, the Frierdiker Rebbe talks about heterim, a heter. And I said that in Smicha school, they taught us that a Rav, a good Rav, is not someone who can be machmer, but someone who can be mekel, but be mekel with real solid support from halacha to be mekel. And, in other words, he's a big Yireh Shemayim. And he finds, for whatever reason, sometimes it's because of a person, sometimes it's because of a situation. I'll give you another example. We all know, we spoke about it earlier in the Maamar, that, the wasting of seed is a prohibition and an issue and all that. The Tzemach Tzedek has a tshuva, and the Rebbe cites it in his letters, that if a husband and wife are having a hard time the wife's having a hard time getting pregnant, and they need to, have semen to use to try to become, they're allowed to in that case. That's a very big chiddush, because you're talking about an isser. You're talking about an isser min ha-Torah, the wasting of semen. It's not small change. And the Tzemach Tzedek, who was a posek on agunis, at his time, he was from the leading poskim that all the Litvaks, the Chassidim, everyone came to him. Rab Chaim Tzanzer, the Divrei Chaim, writes to him, and you see the titles, he writes to his children that the Tzemach Tzedek is Goyim Shebegoyim, and Rab Chaim Tzanzer was a Goyim Shebegoyim, the Divrei Chaim of Tzanz, right? And his respect for the Tzemach Tzedek, because in the field of Agunis, he was a Poisek Ador. And the same Tzemach Tzedek is matir for the possibility of getting pregnant, this. And the Rebbe cites it to different people. What do I see from this? What I see is that it's on the shoulders of the Tzemach Tzedek. Just like in Moshe Feinstein. What was everyone, talking about Rab Moshe? Rab Moshe had broad shoulders. He took upon himself the hardest shilas that Rabbanim didn't want to paskin. They were afraid, simply afraid, because they could not come up with what they felt is a fine heter. So what did they do? They sent to Rab Moshe, and Rab Moshe made a ruling, whatever his ruling was, and many times he was makel, and that was criticism that he got from different communities because they felt he was a makel, But he was a makel. He was a Poisek Adoyer, a massive Talmud Chacham. Yes, and he made that decision, and that's why we went to him. So what we find is that who are the real Rabbanim are people who have and do make kulas for certain situations when it's warranted, but otherwise, stay away from Hetadim. Because Hetadim, that's what we're learning here. It develops. This is the point. It desensitizes you, and you're very flippant on many things. That's the problem. And if you think about it, you'll see it in your own lives. I see it in my own lives. Yes, Yoni.
You were talking about the Satmar Rebbe. You brought a story.
Yeah.
I'll tell you another story. My father told me when he was well. He told me the story. And my father grew up on 125th Taylor Street. It was directly across the street from the Satmar Rebbe.
Right.
So there was one night, a big commotion, in the middle of the night, like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. The police had to come. What happened? A bunch of the Satmar Rebbe's Hasidim broke into the Satmar Rebbe's house. And they broke into the house, and they didn't steal anything. They broke all the mirrors in the house because of the Rebbitzin, because she put herself together. She would wear nice clothing,
right,
and this and that. But they didn't like it. But they went against their own Rebbe. That's what was so crazy.
I know of the story. In fact, I might have even put it into the book. But your father actually saw it?
Saw it and heard it. He said the police came. He went down. He was a teenager.
It's a famous story in the community here. That story that they broke, and it's been written about that they broke the mirrors.
Yeah, my father remembered the story when the Chabad Hasidim came to Williamsburg.
Oh, that was 1977. Yeah. Yonason, you were there?
Yonason, you're on mute. He's on mute. He doesn't.
Okay, we'll go on. He's on mute. Anyway, so.
Wait. I was there.
Okay. You were there. Did you get any garbage thrown at you or any dirty diapers?
I got an egg.
You what?
I got an egg going to get thrown at me.
And you had a schus. Years ago I was in Ir David, and I went down to Shleima's the Brecha over there, where the Bartanura is buried. Right outside of the old city, or in the old city, whatever it is. And I got a rock thrown at me from an Arab, and I came back to my Balabatim in California. I think it was 1989, and I said, "Guys, I'm the happiest person. I was zeicha to get a rock thrown at me for visiting a Yiddish place." So you were zeicha to get an egg thrown at you for coming to Williamsburg to spread Torah. Anyway, Let's continue. So we're on page 185, bottom of the page, towards the bottom. And he says, the Chain Hu, it's 6 lines from the bottom towards the end of the line. The Chain Hu b'yeridas haneshama beguf, so we find when the soul descends into a body, b'chlal u'zmanagos b'frat. What happens? What happens is that the soul was very religious and very frum and very careful. It comes into a goof, oh, this aches me, and this, and this bothers me, so I'll be matter this, and I'll be matter that. Okay. Now he goes back to the opening verse of the Maamar, a pasuk in Yeshaya. Varuchoscha, and your healing, I'm interpreting it based on Rashi. Meheira sitzmach, will quickly spring forth. You remember, Chavre, we learned in the beginning that what will bring the healing for all of these various maladies, hu al yedei ha'oir atzmi, that's through your own light, your own essence. He'll explain a little more later. Then, at the dawn time, the light of the dawn will break through. The begilu atzmi, when your essential light. Yes, Hillel.
And this is the pasuk we began with?
Yeah, it's the latter part. Yeah. It's Yeshaya Kapitel Nun Ches. So he says, the begilu atzmi, when your essential light shines through, hine varuchoscha, the result is shurefuas hanefesh. It's a healing for the neshama, for the nefesh. And when will this healing be? Meheira sitzmach. It'll be immediate. But that's as long as you have the oir atzmi. So look what he says next. Omnam, however, gilu oir atzmi tolui, this revelation of the essential light depends what the verse says before, which is, look further, Prois loreiv lachmecha, share of your bread to the hungry, with the hungry. Number 2, vaniyim erudim, and downtrodden poor people, tavi boyis, bring them home. Number 3, kisire arum v'chisisoi, you will see the naked, clothe him. And number 4, umipsarcha, and from your own flesh, leitisalim, don't hide. Remember to take care of your own as well. Shehein darche, next page, top of the page, 186. Darche inyone avoida. These 4 things, as he's going to explain the next chapter, are 4 different methods of serving Hashem. Uvichlalusam hu inyan tshuva. If you had to put them all in one word, it's tshuva. You know, we don't think as feeding the poor as tshuva. Yes, Hillel.
I don't get the 4. I got 3. Pras l'reiv lachmecha. 1. Vaniyim merudim tavi bayis. That's 2. Right?
Yeah.
Kitire arum when you see the naked, because see, so you should dress them. Umisarcha. Okay. 4 is mibasarcha lo titalem.
Right. Umipsarcha. The first 3, Hillel, are about the other. Number 4 says umipsarcha lo titalem, and we'll see later how he. But on top of 186 now, he says, look, if you want to put him into one word, it's tshuva. But Moshe, usually, we don't think of feeding someone a meal as tshuva. My tshuva. He's hungry and I give him food. He doesn't have clothing, or it's torn clothing, and I buy him a suit. Right? The point is, what's the nekuda? That the Rebbe says that Yeshaya Novi is saying that all of these four things is not just about being a good Jew who does hachnosas orchim and feeds the poor and dresses the naked and etc. and has a heart for the downtrodden. But it's your tshuva. So if you do proper tshuva in these four ways, you're going to get an immediate response, a FedEx, an email, a Zelle today. The money comes to you in a moment, anywhere, right? Meheira satzmiach, meheira, rushed, quick.
In this chus, I'm waiting for FedEx. It got lost in Germany. So in this chus of our learning, I should get my package.
Amen, amen. Says the Rebbe, this comes to teach us inyan va'ofen hatshuva, the manner and the content and the manner of tshuva levayir tois b'nei yodam. Oh, very good. This comes to clarify a mistake that we make. What's the mistake? Shechoishvim, we think the ikara, the primary aspect of tshuva is rak b'sigufei haguf uvetzoim. It's punishing your body, not sleeping on a bed, sleeping on a hard mattress. Hard, some people like that today, but whatever. Uvetzoim, and fasting. Again, this was more common years ago. I don't think there are many people that do this today, but the ideology is still the same. Tshuva, reduce your eating, reduce your sleeping. In other words, kind of punish your body in a way. Says the Rebbe, no, that's not primary aspect of tshuva. Look what he says.
So about Inun, Rebbe, he's talking about Inun, that's what it means? Meaning when he's talking about the suffering part, like Inuing?
He's saying sigufei haguf means the suffering of the body. Yes, inu, yeah. Kiim, what is iker hatshuva? Look at this word. Kiim iker hatshuva hu. This is primary aspect of tshuva. One, hacharota al ha'ava, regret for what I did in the past. Number two, the kabbalah al haba, acceptance for the future not to do it again. In which things? B'chol adal inyonim amavorim, in all the four things that we explained. So in other words, the four things in Yeshaya, Preish Lachamecha, etc., are the tools to implement the feeling that we're supposed to walk away with, which is Charota al ha'avar, the Kabbalah al lahaba. Now, so this, by the way, is discussed at length in the Geras HaTshuva of the Balatanya. But the idea, and it's based on the Rambam, what we're learning is that the sigufim, I mean, the fact is, it talks about sigufim, punishment, not giving into your body's needs and all that, and it talks about soim, fasting. We fast, several times a year, and then there are people fast for different reasons. So the Rebbe is whitewashing all of this? No. There are specific times that we need to do these fasts, and even sigufim at certain times. The Alter Rebbe in Chodesh Elul, the Maimani Lidoidi, he talks about if nothing helps, that you can't arouse yourself to do tshuva. Sometimes you need an extreme method, but it's the ideology and philosophy that he says that's the motivator, that's the ikar. The ikar is, I regret what I did and I accept that I will not do it again. That has to be the driving force behind everything else. That's his point. And the Rebbe says here, the previous Rebbe says, To'os b'nei Yodam. This idea comes to exclude a mistake made by people where they think that this is tshuva. No. This is the result of tshuva. Tshuva is charot alahava. And why does he say it over here? And because sometimes people think by writing the check or by fasting they're forgiven. It doesn't work that way. You have to write the check and you have to fast, but it doesn't. It's the drive that's behind it, and that's much harder. Charot alahava, both. not just Kabbalah ala haba. And when we say Charot ala Ovar, it's not just I regret, and then it's like a New Year's resolution that you break in a week or two. You know what I'm saying? Or even Achlata that we take at a Farbrengen or at a Kiddush, and it lasts for a week or two or three, and then we. Charot ala Ovar is what Moshe did. You know what Moshe did? He started to come to the Shir in reality. It puts everything else, he's at the Shir. Not that he had to do true if anything, like anything specific. No, but I'm saying, talk is cheap. Yeah, talk is cheap. All of us, it's cheap. When you have to commit yourself to something and you make a commitment, whatever it is, and to yourself, like he shared yesterday with his story with his brother, that's Charot ala Ovar. And the same is true with Bali Tshuva. Again, going back to my writing about Bali Tshuva. Charot ala Ovar is a mainstay, nevertheless. If someone gets down on themselves and says, well, I'm not genuine because I haven't gotten rid of it from the depth of my heart. The answer is, you're like all of us. We're like all the same. We work and struggle and we do our best. You understand? So to go and say my charata is not true, it depends. If you use your charata and you're a hypocrite and you continue consciously doing the no good, whatever that may be, then you haven't done charata. But if you really did charata, from time to time you fall in. It's like you're talking about the alcoholic who stops drinking, and from time to time he has a breakdown and he takes a drink and you know, is he a faker? No, he tried his best, and it's a very hard addiction to break for such a person, and we need to understand that this is the way the Torah gives us room to exist and breathe. So the Rebbe says, as long as you have Charot ala Ovar and you really mean it, and Kabbalah ala haba, then your tshuva is a true tshuva. And the way to prove it are these four things that he's going to talk about in the upcoming chapter. Anyway, Chevra, I wish you all a mazel tov on behalf of my new grandson who will be named in about an hour or so in Mitzvah Shem. So I'll let you know the name. And we should only go for simchas. Everyone here should simchas marry off their children and have grandchildren, and simchas everyone only in a good, healthy way. And we'll see everyone in Mitzvah Shem Monday.
Amen.
Very good.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sei gesund. Bye. Good Shabbos.